Bringing unity to the community. 89.9 KMOJ, the People's Station.
89.9 KMOJ, today's R&B and throwbacks. I'm Glam Life Kim, and right now I have Mr. Anthony Taylor with Minneapolis 360 on the line. How are you today, Anthony?
I'm feeling real blessed today, Kim. I feel good about a lot of different things, and one of the reasons that I'm feeling good today is because it's gorgeous outside, low humidity, and it's always good to do the show with you. So I'm always feeling blessed every 2 weeks, right?
Me too. It is a good feeling. We be dropping some knowledge now. We dropped some gems there.
We dropped some gems, absolutely. And last week's show was a gem. And this week's show is actually a gem too. So I am super excited about today's show. I want to welcome everybody to Minneapolis 360. I am Anthony Taylor. I am the African American Community Specialist for the city of Minneapolis. I welcome everyone today at 1 o'clock every 2 weeks to do our show. And Kim talked about it just a few minutes ago about some of the information that we want to provide city of Minneapolis residents. And this, I think, is an important topic because every time the calendar turns, and I know if people think like me, once the calendar turns into August, folks are starting to talk about school. So usually, typically what happens is that, at least in my family, is that we talk about school, we start to get our school supplies together, we talk about getting our school clothes together, folks find daycare options for our children. However, we are in a different time, in a different space than we've ever been in our lifetimes, dealing with COVID-19 and a lot of things that are happening and things that are adjusted around COVID. And public schools and going back to school is going to look very different for a lot of folks in our country. And as we localize it to the city of Minneapolis, I have a wonderful guest that I want to bring on and talk about it. And I usually, folks, I give you a lot of different information about COVID and some of those things that I like to share about the numbers and the resources and a lot of those things. We'll get to that. So what I want to do today is really get our guest on so he can start talking about this in Minneapolis schools. And it's my pleasure to introduce Minneapolis Superintendent Ed Gfaff to the program. Ed, how are you, sir, today?
I'm doing well, Anthony. Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you, Kim, for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of information about Minneapolis Public Schools.
Absolutely. We're excited.
And I think we are very excited, and I think it's important. And before, Ed, I put you on, I just want to talk about what the governor's Safe Learning Plan is. And I want you to talk about how it affects Minneapolis schools specifically. So schools are, in the beginning of this year, have a choice to decide on three models: in-person learning, distance learning, or a hybrid model, which is really a combination of in-person and distance learning. So again, the governor has let school districts choose on what their plan is in conjunction with state officials and partnering with different schools to figure out what models they can use during the school years. So schools have to announce their learning models. And really what's important, that all of these models and these decisions are based on factors from the health department and other partners to make sure which schools and charter schools work best for those school districts. Whatever the schools your school go to, your districts that your schools or your children go to, families have the option to choose distance learning no matter what school districts decide. So that's really a key component to the governor's order, allowing districts to choose their model. So bringing in Superintendent Gfaff, how does this decision affect Minneapolis Public Schools?
Well, Anthony, first I have to give you a compliment. You did a really nice job of taking a very complex and thorough executive order and summarizing it very well. You know, there have been a number of documents that we've been working from all summer long, the Minnesota Department of Health guidance, the Minnesota Department of Education guidance, to do just that, to develop scenarios in those three areas. And in Minneapolis Public Schools, we came up with this concept of creating a dial, very similar to what the governor has done. It has 5 phases to safe learning. And phase 1 was full distance. As you mentioned, districts are expected to require that as an option for families, no matter what their scenarios are in their school year. So we have that dial at phase 1, distance learning. That's where we were last spring. Obviously, we've made some enhancements to our distance learning model. And where we're going to start is phase 2 of the dial. Phase 2 is distance learning with supports. Hopefully at some point during the school year, we will be in phase 5, which is a return to in-person learning. But for now, we took a look at the governor's guidance, which was, looking at the health data, Hennepin County, the overall case rates. And, Hennepin County is a large county. We also know that Minneapolis is unique in terms of some of the health challenges that it has as a city. And so we made the decision based on all of that, as well as some other factors with our input and interest from staff and families, to start at distance learning with supports. And one specific thing that's important to note, when we looked at our Minneapolis city data around COVID-19, broke it down by race among our Black and Latino families, there are more than 50 cases per 10,000 residents in Hennepin County. And so why that's significant for us is that Minneapolis Public Schools is, consists of about 70% students and families of color. So we were very cognizant of the health concerns and the safety of our staff and students in making this decision. Another important note is that when we surveyed families, the 2 priorities they gave to us were first to make sure that we had a safe and safety of staff and students, and then also improved our remote learning options for families. So we ended up with going forward with phase 2, distance learning with supports, and we provided that information to our board on the 30th, just after the governor made his announcement. And then last night at a board meeting, we walked through just some of the different expectations for families and ways that we could communicate what that will look like for students, staff, and our families.
So Superintendent Gfaff, and I thank you again for joining us. How difficult or how easy was this decision to make, knowing that students haven't been in school since March, and a lot of socialization comes with interaction with in-person, with on the school bus, in the classroom. So you said you had a survey and there was a lot of positive data that families wanted to start out with distance learning. Was this a difficult or easy decision to make once you got that data from folks?
Oh, it was a very difficult decision. We wrestled with it. We wrestled with just the different models that we were having to create. There's so many factors and variables to consider, the safety and well-being of your staff, of our staff. So what does that look like when we're supposed to be providing transportation, or we're supposed to be delivering, meals to students, or, all of those operational things you have to think about. But then just the magnitude of impact on families. We know we have families through last spring that were extremely challenged by having to have, their children in the home when they were either taking care of other children or other family members, or working and trying to work from home, or having to go out to work in some cases because they were essential employees. So none of those situations were lost on us at all, and it was very difficult because, we ultimately want to take care of our students and our families' needs, as educators. So we wrestled with that. We also wrestled with, as you mentioned at the beginning, the excitement of going back to school, such nostalgic thoughts of going to the store and getting your pencils and your new, 3-ring binder and your new shoes and getting all ready for school. And now we're wrestling with what is that going to look like for our students. But I think where we landed definitely is the right place for us, and we are committed to making sure that we provide the best experience possible, build some excitement around the start of the year as well for our students and families. This is going to be unlike any other year that they've had, but, it's our commitment to ensure that they are seeing the joy and the experience of learning, even though it will be in a distance mode to start with, and then just building on that. As we see our health situations improve, we'll move towards, the next phase of our model, which is potentially distance learning with some targeted in-person supports, and ultimately hopefully transitioning to full in-person in school at some point this year.
We are talking to Minneapolis Public Schools Superintendent Ed Gfaff, and just a few minutes ago, Superintendent, you talked about some of the supports that Minneapolis Public Schools is going to put in place. And I want to just talk about a couple things when you talk about support. So if students probably need Chromebooks, I'm for sure that they're going to have to do that. When we're talking about doing distance learning, being virtual, how can families get these Chromebooks if they don't have them? What's the situation regarding about getting that in the hands of students?
Well, last spring we distributed close to 16,000 devices for our families. We also distributed a number of hotspots because we know that the digital divide, the inequities that are out there related to connectivity are not just about having network or system of infrastructure in our city, but it's the cost associated with that. So we, again, are very committed to making sure that they have those very technical supports they need, such as devices. And what we're planning to do this month of August is to set up an opportunity for families, because we did not ask for those devices back over the summer. We encourage families to use them or students to use them to stay engaged through learning different options within the community. But we're setting up in August opportunities for families to exchange those devices if they are not working as well as they used to be, or they have some cord or malfunction, or they need to, in fact, get one because they didn't use one last year. They actually had one in the house, and now they recognized with us going full-on distance learning, they're going to need one at a more consistent level. So we'll have an opportunity for families to contact their school. We'll coordinate pickup and exchange for those devices. We also have our IT service up and running. Families will be able to contact our IT numbers, from Monday through Friday from 7:30 to 4 p.m. But ultimately, our goal is to get a device in the hand of every child who needs one before September 8th, the first day of school. And so it's really important that we make sure we have information for families available to them by, sending it out via email or some of our robocalls that we'll be sending home. So looking forward to getting those devices shored up where families need that.
And also, too, Superintendent, I want to just talk about maybe tutors and homework help. I know as a student, especially as a high school student, I relied a lot on either my study halls or my tutors while I was doing in-person classroom learning, like going to school like regular, right? So since we are now in Minneapolis is going to distance learning, how can folks access that help? And even with some of our Latino brothers and sisters, right? How can we get some, how folks can get homework help? Absolutely, with that and any Spanish tutors or homework help that's available.
So there are a couple of things. Again, the first thing we want to make sure as we start up this school year is that we have really good contact information for families. We want to make sure we have their cell numbers, their addresses, email accounts, because the schools are going to be the direct point for contact and communication with families. So it's critical that they have that information. We're also going to work very hard the month of August to develop that connection with families. Many of our students will be starting a new division. They went from elementary to middle school to high school. Some may be even changing schools. So we want to establish that strong connection early on with some communication. So expect to have some more outreach from our families. But in terms of the support for homework, definitely looking to their teacher directly. Teachers will be able to, share their online information that they're going to be providing on a consistent basis. We also do know that students who speak Spanish or other languages will be able to get that assistance through teachers. We have some supplementary resources on our website, and encourage everyone to go to our website, mpls.k12.mn.us. We're going to have more information on there about distance learning, site solely dedicated to distance learning with some answers to questions that people might have. And then finally, as this is distance learning with supports, our first group of supports that we're focused on does include tutoring support. We're looking at working with, AmeriCorps, partners such as AmeriCorps or Reading Corps for a focus on our reading and math. City of Lakes is another tutor that we're going to be working and collaborating with. In addition to that, we will have our school-based health clinics set up at our high schools so that students can get support for physical and mental health in person, and our school-based mental health partners such as North Point and Washburn, at various schools throughout Minneapolis Public Schools will be assisting with those needs of what those supports might look like during our distance learning time.
Those are all wonderful. I guess I have a question, Superintendent. So as far as, let's say, our youth, the young ones, whether they're in third grade or fourth grade, and of course, parents have to work to make ends meet, and, they may not have the time to necessarily be able to assist as much, with the kids in their schooling. So I guess my concern is just them getting behind. I know that, teachers are able to do as much as they can online. Are you guys offering any in-person tutoring for, youth or those who are falling, far behind or who just aren't catching on or who really need, the additional help?
Well, definitely you'll see a change in our distance learning model from last year to this year. Okay. Last year we were kind of in a crisis or an emergency mode and having to create distance learning, just in the middle of the third quarter or near the end of the third quarter. Right. So we're much more intentional this year with our distance learning. Okay. We're going to make sure that the curriculum is very aligned, so students will be receiving, all aligned curriculum to the district's adopted resources and materials. We will have staff supporting, and, because we're starting in distance learning, we're not going to have that immediate face-to-face support. But as we move through our continuum or turn that dial, we will see more of those opportunities. And that's part of the partnership that I mentioned, making sure that we have, contact opportunities available as our dial turns as we get into maybe the second portion of our phase 2 distance learning. But the expectation for all of our kids is that they will have much more teacher contact on a daily basis. And we're looking at trying to provide live lessons as much as possible, and then recording those lessons with the support staff following up, and again, just trying to ensure that the communication is really strong. We don't want families to expect that they have to be the teacher. And the other thing is that we learned a lot. Many of our kids didn't have the ability to maintain some of the online time independently. So right. We recognize we've got to find ways to be more engaging and creative and build those relationships with kids so they stay connected to their learning. But academics and support are certainly a concern of ours, and we'll be monitoring that also with some of our diagnostic supports for students so we can see that their learning is actually progressing from where they were last year.
Awesome.
Superintendent Gfaff, I'm glad you're on because community folks are listening. Because this is really valuable information. And I received a text from a Minneapolis community member, and he wanted me to ask a question about the special education students and level 4 students. Mm-hmm. How is learning going to happen for them this year?
So this is, again, an area that I think is of great significance and importance when we talk about, how students learn, and knowing that some of our students in the category of level 4 are our most intense needs. Mm-hmm. And, the resources and how we wrap around and support those students is top of mind for us. So what we're doing with special education, providing related services in multiple ways. We'll have our online learning services, instructional materials, we'll have telehealth services, we'll have additional instructional videos. We also know that with students who receive special education services, they have an individualized education plan. And that plan really is to meet their specific needs. So one of the commitments we've made is that we will have staff reaching out to parents before the start of the school year to review where they are with the needs of their child and make sure that we're aligned to providing that support for their IEP, even in a distance learning model. And as part of our progression into hybrid learning, we will certainly be looking at targeting populations and bringing those students back as a consideration. But they should have regularly collaborative conversation with families through teleconferences, phone conferences, Google Meets, and as appropriate, have some of those virtual learning sessions individually with parent permission. We'll provide office hours to families and students. We know that this is a very different time, and we know, again, with some of our special education students and the unique needs that they have, they're going to need much more intensive support, and that's all part of what we're looking to do with our staff as well. Beyond just the classroom teacher, we have associate educators, who do an amazing job of working with students and families. So we'll be leveraging their efforts and coordinating those additional supports, as needed for the student's IEP.
Great.
And we are, again, and thank you, Superintendent Gfaff, for being on today. A couple more questions because we're running up against the clock. I want to just kind of focus on lunches for children, right? And I mean, we know that a lot of our children depend on that breakfast and lunch. And during the pandemic, I know districts have found a way to get food to folks. What's the plan happening for lunches if we're going into phase 2 for distance learning? What are some of the ways that Minneapolis Public Schools will get lunches to food or to children this fall?
Well, right now we are still operating our summer feeding program, as we refer to it. We have, nearly 50 sites across the city where families can pick up meals. They get one food package per child per week. So within that package, they get 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches for a total of 10 meals per week. And I will tell you, I just spoke with a director before coming on here who's been out helping, trying to coordinate pick up and drop off of distribution for, not students, but families in the community. We're all aware of the food desert that exists on the north side and the importance of nutrition, not only, for adults, but especially for our students. So we're providing that service now. We'll be providing it through August 21st. We will look at some type of transition, especially as we go back into a hybrid model, but more information will be coming out on the district webpage. And so I encourage people to go to mpls.k12.mn.us, and we have a link on there, a COVID-19 link. There's information also in Spanish on the webpage. But we are updating our practices for food distribution and looking at, how we can continue to offer that service. We have distributed more than, I think my last count was over 2.5 million meals over the last couple of months in the city of Minneapolis. So we know that need is out there, and it's one that we're, again, grateful that we have the staff able to support it, and the quality of the food that the students are receiving as well is top-notch.
We are with Superintendent Ed Gfaff, Minneapolis Public Schools, today talking about what distance learning looks like for the upcoming school year. Superintendent Gfaff, if you had one piece of advice to give to folks on how to prepare for this unprecedented time with the beginning of school year being distance learning, what would that be?
One piece of advice. I would say, first and foremost, take care of your health. Wash your hands, wear a face covering in public. And, we have to make sure that our physical, emotional, mental health is strong, because we've got to be there for our students and our youth. So that would be the first piece of advice that I would have. Beyond that, I will say stay tuned for more information. And if you're a prospective Minneapolis parent or you've got a student that is currently in Minneapolis Public Schools, I'd strongly encourage you to stay connected with Channel 15 or our website. We'll be certainly pushing out information via emails, and also make sure that you have updated your address, your phone number, and contact information, because we're looking forward to connecting with you. And we know that this is going to be a new school year, and one that is obviously unprecedented, but we're going to make it the best possible school year for our students as we can.
Thank you, Superintendent Ed Gfaff. I know you are a busy man, especially around this time. I think the folks in Minneapolis appreciate you coming on the show today.
Absolutely.
To give folks a lot of good information. So thank you again, Superintendent.
Thank you both. Thanks for making this such a great conversation for our public.
We appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
That was Minneapolis Superintendent Ed Gfaff talking about what this fall looks like. And Minneapolis is starting off with distance learning for this first half of the year. And just, Kim, what is your thoughts on his information and having folks start out of school for this first couple of months?
Well, I feel confident in what he's saying as far as the new plan. It was really difficult to adjust to, right during the middle of the school year, everybody have to stop. And now we got to figure out a plan on how we can teach everybody from home, and how parents, now people got to stop working and they got to help their kids. And then it seemed like the parents became teachers. So it was a lot, So I feel that now they, hopefully have a better grasp on, how to execute this plan. And it sounds like they're prepared for the different, obstacles that could come up. This is something it's hard for me because just like, my daughter is going off to college and they decided to do online schooling at Clark where she was going to go. So then she was like, oh, I think I'm going to do my second choice of Texas Southern, because she said it was just hard doing online school during her high school years. So she was like, I don't want to have to do it for college too. So, I am still concerned, that hopefully our youth still get the best education, possible, and that they don't fall behind because of these. Yeah. 2 years.
It's extremely hard to be able to not be with your peers and not socialize and not play sports. And I think some of the things that this has affected young people is school, and that fact that they can't be in school and they have to do distance learning when there's so many other distractions at home.
Right.
I'm hoping that some of the programs that we had provided over the last few months during COVID helped on how to get your child prepared with some things that you can do to help them learn and be really, help them participate in different things and have creative ideas and ways to keep young people busy.
Yeah.
But this does affect them quite a bit.
It does. Especially, I kind of worry a little bit more about the younger ones. And if their parents aren't computer friendly, if they don't really know how to use these applications or the software, and so trying to navigate, with Google Meets and Zoom meetings and all, and if you're not computer, literate, then I just feel like, it can be a little challenging. So I just hope that, community, it takes a village, help. Ask your neighbors, could they use some assistance, check on the babies.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad the superintendent came on, and just a couple takeaways that I think is really important from what he said, and he gave some great information, is that you need to check in with your district to find out exactly what's going on. So what he said I thought was very important is make sure that your phone number is up to date. Make sure that your email is up to date, that the schools have your contact information for whatever changes and all the information that's coming up. Also, too, this is a City of Minneapolis program. That doesn't mean that all of our students go to Minneapolis Public Schools, right? So there's a lot of students that go to Robbinsdale, a lot of students that go to Wayzata. You still have to do the same thing. St. Paul School Districts, absolutely. So make sure those districts have your information and continue to check the website for additional information. But if we're talking specifically with Minneapolis, it is going to start distance learning for this school year. So, and I think it was a good decision. Yeah, because
I just hate for all the kids go back to school and then it's worse.
And it gets worse, and the start and stop is not easy. So, again, I want to thank Superintendent. I want to thank Glam Life Kim as always.
Thank you
for this show. I am privileged to be here and blessed, and I hope that we inform folks. If there's any questions, you can always contact me at anthony.taylor@minneapolismn.gov. You can also go on KMOJ's Facebook page to get more information about the things that we talked about. So, Glam Life.
Absolutely. Hey,
Always
it's been real. We appreciate you. This show is wonderful. Thanks for all that you do, Anthony.
Yep. Thank you, sis. I will see everybody in 2 weeks.
All right. One love, kings and queens. Until next time.
This hour of programming on KMOJ is supported in part